No way. We're at
It's
the
12 o'clock.
this is 12 o'clock.
It's time to go. All right. All right. Hey, welcome everybody. We are thrilled for everyone that's been able to join us. My name's Jason Johnson. I represent the Why Try organization, and I'm going to be moderating this kind of online summit that we've got going today. We're thrilled to have two thought leaders with us today, Miranda Beard and Christian Moore. I'll more formally introduce them in just a minute. Do you both want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Yes.
Hello. It's great to be with everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, so right off the bat, we've got a little bit of feedback already. It looks like we've gotten a really incredible response to this. A lot of people interested in joining, and Zoom, the platform that we're using, has been pretty overloaded the past couple weeks with
I can imagine
having to go online. And so it sounds like there's been some people that are trying to get in that haven't been able to. If somebody expresses that to you, let them know we are recording this and we're going to get this available as a shareable link very quickly after we're done. So our apologies. We're doing our best to be able to handle it, but right now online bandwidth is really being stretched. But we're thrilled for everybody that's with us. We're really excited to have a discussion today with Miranda and Christian joining us. What I'll do, I'm going to, as I mentioned, my name's Jason Johnson. I represent the Why Try organization. I'm going to formally introduce them, and then I'm going to politely step out of the picture and let Miranda and Christian just kind of go. They've both got some incredible experience and wonderful ideas and perspective on some pretty important and difficult topics right now. Miranda, I'll start with Miranda. She is a motivational speaker and a leading advocate on equity, cultural proficiency, and leadership training for school boards, administrators, and teachers to help close achievement gaps and create first-rate learning environments for students. As the 2016-17 president of the National School Boards Association in Washington, D.C., she traveled extensively across the United States, parts of Central and Western Europe, and the Dominican Republic to promote equity and excellence in education for all children. NSBA's members, state school board associations, provide training opportunities to 90,000 school board members who serve 50 million children in America. She served nearly 20 years as a trustee and president of Laurel, Mississippi School District, and worked 30 years as a professional journalist. She owns B&B Consultants, Inc. We are thrilled to have Miranda with us today. So welcome, Miranda.
Thank you so much, Jason. The honor is really mine. I'm excited about being here with Christian. And, you know, we have a lot to say, but we only have a limited amount of time to do it.
We do. Well, that's a perfect transition. Let me introduce Christian, and then I'll let you two go to it. Christian's a renowned author, speaker, and licensed clinical social worker. He spent most of his childhood years on the streets near Washington, D.C. due to some learning disabilities. Counselors informed him that college wasn't going to be an option. However, Christian became a well-respected recipient of a master's degree as social worker in education, youth corrections, and homeless program. Christian saw the need for a new approach and created the Why Try program. And he now speaks at over 100 conferences a year, consults with thousands of school districts on lowering dropout rates, improving school climate, preventing bullying, and closing the achievement gap by teaching social and emotional education. So we are thrilled to have two luminaries here to discuss some important topics. Now, one last logistical piece, and then I'll step out of the way and let Christian and Miranda kind of start their discussion. We want to field some questions at the end. We're going to target going about an hour. It may go a little bit longer depending on how things go. But if you have questions, type them in the chat box, and we'll be collecting those, and then we'll try to preserve a few minutes at the end of the discussion to respond to some of your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat box. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Christian and Miranda to discuss our topic for the day.
We certainly appreciate it. And Jason, I don't know if there's something we can do. I'm getting a flood of text messages of people saying there's a limit of 100 participants that Zoom's allowing to get on. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that or not.
Okay, we'll be working behind the scenes. We've got somebody on the line with Zoom right now to see if we can expand it out. If they don't open those gates, which they were supposed to, then our next best bet is just going to be to get the recording out to as many people as we can.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll have the recording online and stuff where they can access it. I'm getting the same thing where my phone, they keep popping up saying the same thing. But hey, that's a good problem when people are tuning in to listen to us, Miranda. So that's good.
Absolutely. You know, I have a smile on my face, and Christian, I know you have one too, but yet my heart is heavy. It's heavy because we're facing issues across this great nation of ours that we've never had to face before because of the coronavirus. And I want to first of all thank all the individuals that are online with us today, all the things that they're doing unselfishly to help and assist children and others across this country. You know, we're working together on this to try to get through this process. And I know for sure, as we talk about equity, as we talk about resilience, this has escalated to another level that we have not had to deal with and have not had to face before.
No, absolutely. I've had a emotional morning. It's been kind of a roller coaster. Good at times, felt down. I was talking to a friend of mine, a grown man who, one of the toughest, strongest people I know, highly resilient. And he was sharing with me this morning, he goes, Christian, after I woke up, I was literally in tears for about 30, 40 seconds crying. And for me, that helped me really understand you know, the emotional journey people are on right now is really, really intense. And, you know, we're literally going to go through the stages of grief, and we'll maybe talk about this a little bit later. But if you're feeling some intense emotions, that's as normal as breathing. And I think we have to really acknowledge that for adults and for children.
You know, our schools were not prepared for all of this, you know, the distance learning, social distancing and all of that, not for long term, because right now, as you know, Christian, we have no idea how long we're going to be in this position that we're in. So schools and districts and counselors and those that work with children, they're scrambling, trying to figure out what they need to do because we've never been in this position before. You know, when you know that 20 million families across America don't have digital access to the internet and all of that, how do you handle that when you say distance learning and everything is going online? Every child is not online. In fact, I was looking at some statistics from the Federal Communications Commission that said that 1 in 5 children, kindergarten through high school, they don't have internet access. So what do you do? How do you make sure those children are taken care of?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge, huge crisis right now. The number of kids that don't have access to technology is huge. And we as a country really, really have to focus on that, improve that. I hope over the next, you know, year or even less, that's a higher priority, that we make that investment into the technology. But what's also really standing out to me right now, and this has been really humbling for me, even though, you know, I'm an education consultant. I go to, you know, I've had the opportunity the last few years to go to thousands of schools and consult around social and emotional education and academics. But I'm just starting to understand, you know, at what role education played in a child's life outside of academics or even technology and stuff. Just the social and emotional, the personal connection, providing, you know, food and recreation and connection, especially for really vulnerable populations. And by the way, I wanted to say at the beginning, I didn't get a chance. It's an honor, Miranda, to be here with you today, talking about vulnerable populations, equity issues, because this is a huge, huge issue. And again, we know the purpose of public education, of course, is academics and making sure they have access to great academics as technology. But I want to point out right now, I see a crisis for so many children that don't have, you know, it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Those needs aren't being met. And I'm proud of what teachers and educators have done to step up in those other areas. And I'm hoping we as a society see that it's more than just academics and technology. And don't get me wrong, I want to get that technology. I want to have great academics. But human beings are first humans. They're first social creatures. They need their basic needs met. And just wanted to, this morning I was reading a couple examples of what a couple schools are doing, school systems are doing. You know, it's amazing what teachers and administrators are doing to transform education. And then, you know, I do a lot of work over the years in Gwinnett, Georgia. I want to have a shout out to my friends there in Gwinnett, Georgia. But I just learned this morning the Gwinnett, Georgia public schools. Gwinnett Public Schools, one of the largest school systems in this country, is literally feeding 90,000 children a day. 90,000. And those teachers are my heroes. Schools are really striving to impact the physical and emotional. If the physical and the emotional of children is taken care of, then we can focus on the academics, the technology. All those things are important, but I don't want to overlook those small things. Those small things are really the biggest things sometimes. I know my own kids are grumpy if their basic needs aren't being met. I just learned that New York City has 93 new regional enrichment centers located throughout the city, 93 centers where they're giving free childcare. I was thinking, man, what are all the workers, you were just talking about, Miranda, the frontline workers that are on the front lines advocating and helping people in hospitals, and everyone from the grocery clerks, all those people doing that frontline work. Anyways, in New York, there's these 93 centers, and they take care of food and their basic needs. And those are my heroes as well. We know there's over 114,000 homeless children in New York alone. And I know that that's something you're passionate about, trying to help them. But those grab and go centers across this country to feed these kids is so important. I hope what comes out of this is we realize, man, we really do need to take care of the basic needs of children. And once those needs are taken care of, then let's kick up academics and get this technology going. But what are your feelings on what I'm saying there?
Absolutely. And I've heard of instances, Christian, where school buses are using the routes that they normally take to make sure children that live in housing projects and areas like that who cannot get to those centers to pick up food, they're using buses to get the food to those areas. So people are thinking outside the box to be creative and coming up with ways to deliver packets to children so that they can continue their learning, as well as delivering food at the same time. So it's causing us to be creative, using the resources that we have, because and I know equity is not by luck or chance, it's on purpose. So we have to do more and more things on purpose to make sure children are taken care of in the way that they need to be taken care of. And as you were talking about children that are homeless, there are children living in cars with their parents. Some are in shelters. In fact, across the country, there's about 1.5 million children that are in that kind of situation. Some of them don't come to school, high absenteeism, because they don't have the shoes to wear to get there, or they don't have the proper clothes to wear to get there. So some districts are creating clothes closets. They're getting donations from the community to create these closets to make sure these children are taken care of, to make sure they have the proper clothing or the proper shoes to come to school and stay in school. So we want them in school. We want them to stay in school.
Absolutely. The pain, the one thing, the physical challenges these kids are dealing with, the physical environment many of these kids in are very, very difficult, but that emotional is going to be just as intense or more. I look at all the resources that I'm able to have, and just yesterday, my 2 children, the challenges they were having emotionally, it just hit me really, really hard, man. The emotional toll on children is going to be so intense. And one thing I told my own kids yesterday is it's okay to express your emotions. I know one of them wanted to express his emotions, the other one didn't, and I just really wanted to emphasize to them, man, that at this time to say I'm afraid or I'm scared or I'm lonely, it's nothing wrong with expressing those emotions. There's more time. There's no time more important than right now. One thing, going back to these vulnerable populations, that I wanted to emphasize, something that I'm seeing pretty effectively, especially with kids with learning disabilities, behavioral disorder kids. I know I've talked to lots of special education teachers, and they're like, Christian, man, we're just so worried about these kids we know that are dealing with very difficult home lives, that have pretty intense behavioral issues and stuff. And one of the things I'm hearing special ed teachers doing that's being pretty effective, I just want to plant that seed with everybody out there, is they're reaching out to the parents, and they're calling the parents, and they're saying, hey, because remember, these teachers know these kids like the back of their hand. They know these kids really well, and they're just calling and giving tremendous support to the parents and saying, look, I know your child's having a difficult time. Here are maybe some strategies you can use at home. I want to be here for you. I want to support you. And I'm hearing great things. The parents are really liking that feedback, and it's lowering the isolation and maybe even some of the distance between the school and the parents, especially those kids are in really tough situations. And so I just want to plant that seed, is just communicating with those parents and giving those parents support right now. We're seeing a good response from that.
As I traveled across the country, Christian, talking about equity issues, this is the time, even when we have to use digital a way to communicate, to start strategically planning equity, to deal with equity concerns, looking at everything through the equity lens, to know what we need to do to help all kinds of children. And I'm not talking about children of one race. We're talking about all children. There are needs for all children, regardless to what background they've come from, what race they are. That is not the primary focus, although we do know that children of color are the ones that in many cases have suffered the most because of equity issues or poverty and those kinds of things. But we have to look at children with special needs, our handicapped children, children with mental issues, not just from the race perspective. When we say all children can learn, we have to make sure we look at our resources as leaders to make sure those resources are put in the right place and used to meet the needs of every child. That's what equity really is all about. I can't give everybody a size 11 shoe and expect that shoe to fit. I've got to use the resources that I have, sitting down at the table with other leaders, those that can make a difference, whether it be parents sitting at the table, students sitting at the table, administrators sitting at the table, counselors sitting at the table, mental health dividers sitting at the table. All these people coming together to collaborate, to see what we can do futuristically, to make sure strategically that we are equitably providing for all the children that need the services that are provided through education.
Yeah, Miranda, I love what you say about you can't give everybody a size 11 shoe. What we should be doing though is giving everybody, if you have shoelaces, you can pull tight in any shoe. They can at least be put on your feet. We got to make sure everybody has access to the laces to pull themselves up with those resources. It's interesting. In the last 20 years, I've had the opportunity to literally visit thousands of schools across this country. And the equity issues that I've seen, I wish I had all the money in the world. I could do a documentary or just show. I don't think people in America sometimes understand the different environments we put children in across this country. I visited thousands of schools, and some schools are beautiful. I've been in schools that literally they have no textbooks. They have cafes in them. They're these high-tech schools that are absolutely incredible. And the next day, I'll go to a school where, there's signs: do not drink out of this water fountain. The water is dangerous. There's asbestos, and all these warnings. As I'm walking through the school, and they're literally, it's an open running school, and I look at that and I go, man, I wish everybody was aware of these equity issues across this country. And sometimes I have a crisis, something good. We want to take a crisis and use it as a reason to improve things. Mm-hmm. And it will take time, but I just think that awareness of just the gaps across this country that certain students have access to and don't have access to, that's existent. I think right now, all of us feel vulnerable. If anybody's feeling a feeling of vulnerability right now, which I know we all are, 99% of us are feeling this vulnerability, but I'm trying to use that to remind myself, with some of my privilege and different things, the vulnerability I'm feeling, I need to have that empathy on a more macro scale for these youth and families across this country that deal with it every single day, that level of vulnerability. And I'm trying to, use those feelings I have and say, how can I improve? How can I speak out more? How can I advocate more? And I know educators are doing that. I know people across this country do. I know you've devoted your life to doing that. That's why it's an honor to be speaking with you right now. And, but if you're feeling vulnerable, even if you're feeling it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I mean, there are people who are dealing with that 24/7 for years and years. And I know that's something you're passionate about.
I am indeed. And some people are wanting to know some best practices right now as we go through this situation. Going forward, I have a question that's in the back of my mind and in my heart right now. As we do come back together and bring our children back to our schools, how are we going to handle going forward with what they may not have gotten as a result of the digital gap or digital divide? How are we going to deal with this? So if we can come back together, say during the summer, one of the things education leaders can do, some of them have provided summer programs where children were falling behind or at risk. They were able to come to summer school to get caught up. We may have to look at expanding summer school for some of these children and providing more counselors at that time and more teachers coming to the forefront at that time to help these children get caught up so that they can move on to the next grade level without falling further behind. Because it's one thing to move them to the next level, but if they're not prepared for the next level, then it puts them more at risk of failing and dropping out of school.
Absolutely. One thing I'm seeing in my hometown, right, not too far from where I grew up in Baltimore, I was excited to see last night that the private sector is stepping up a little bit. We're going to need more and more private sector to step up. Like, for example, in Baltimore, the local cable there is doing Comcast, I know, is giving 2 months free of Wi-Fi, and some other companies are looking at donating iPads and technology. And I think on the back end of this, I think, we all know education has changed either way, right? How we come out the back end of this, education is going to be quite a bit different. And I think online and homeschooling is going to continue to be something pretty large. We're seeing, some kids are doing good under this. Some kids are really struggling. But what I'm saying is it's changed. And because that change is in play, I think the private sector is going to really need to step up, and which they are doing, but I think we'll see more and more, hopefully. And I just kind of want to put that call out. We're going to need help from them to try to get resources, to work through this digital divide. And I was glad to see some articles and some stories this morning in my hometown where the private sector is trying to step up and provide these resources. We're in a country that can crank out tanks during a war, and we can crank out stuff instantaneously into the hundreds of billions of dollars to and I understand it's very important to protect our country, and it costs a lot of money to do that. But at the same time, the greatest asset we have, we go to war to protect these children. We got to invest in these children while they're here, and the amount of money we spend on a jet, we could literally make sure every child in a state or in a community has access to technology. We have the resources to do it. We've got to be able to invest in the most valuable asset we have as children. And I'm just kind of screaming out to the private sector. We definitely need your help on that.
Yeah, we need business leaders. We need politicians. We need everybody coming together right now at this critical time and critical moment to help take those resources to another level. Because I know the struggle that many school districts are facing. The more affluent districts, they can provide more for their students. Those that are impoverished districts, they cannot do that, but yet they're under the same district. So how is it one district can provide for their children and then another segment of the district cannot provide? And that's where we have to look at things through the equity lens. When school board leaders and superintendents sit at the table and start looking at their budgets, how are you looking at your resources? How are you dividing those resources and putting resources in the areas where they're needed the most? How are you going to know that? You've got to sit down and communicate. You got to sit down and talk about it. And some are saying, well, I can't take federal dollars and do this or do that. Well, create a foundation. I know school districts across the country that have created foundations that businesses can give into, private people in the private sector can give into. Those funds are not necessarily discretionary funds unless those people say, I want to specifically give this money for computers. I want to specifically give it for this or that. You could put that money in the foundation, and then the leaders can decide how they could use that money to provide resources in areas where they're needed the most. A foundation has gone a long way to help many, many children across this country, for those school leaders that have put one together and given the community an opportunity to give into it.
No, absolutely. I do a lot of work in Indiana. It's been amazing to see what the private sector and foundations have done in Indiana to help, like the Eli Lilly Foundation. Different foundations have and private organizations have really stepped up to invest in education, and we got to create that across this country. And I'd like to see you know, money in suburbs and communities that have resources for when we do allocation, or each student gets X amount X amount of money, given to them for their education. I think at the state level, we got to say, okay, in these poorest communities, we're going to increase that 30%, 40% to kind of level that playing field for those really vulnerable populations. And I hope that's one of the things that shakes out of this. We've got to practice. Right now we're all kind of going down the same river right now, which I think is going to create some more empathy, some more understanding, because we're all in the same river. But the reality is we're all still in different boats, and we're in different boats with different resources going down the same river. But since we're all in the same river, we got to be looking to our right and left and making sure that everybody's going down that river. Nobody's boat is sinking in this very difficult situation. You had just mentioned, some of the best practice stuff, some of the direct practice skills that these kids need to thrive. And what I'd like to do is share a couple, of some of those skills and some of those things that children need to really thrive right now. But as I was looking at some of these things, I think these things apply to adults just as much as they do to kids, some of these best practice things. Now, I don't want to jump into some of that. I know you may have more you want to share on the equity piece there. Where are you at right now, Miranda, on that?
Go ahead, and I'm sure I can jump in somewhere as you talk about this aspect of it, because I know mental health is a big issue for people that are in the social work industry, mental health care, all of that. In fact, Christian, my heart became very heavy when I heard of two sisters who were contemplating suicide because their parents had lost their jobs right now, or were laid off, don't know when they will go back to work. So they have no income. These children are wondering how they're going to eat, as well as how they're going to learn, because they are in a situation where they are working class poor family. And these children are wondering, they're so afraid, they're so fearful and so scared, they just don't know what to do. And my heart dropped when I heard that story about the two sisters in this family who were saying, what do we have to live for? Why even try? I want to just give up. But I'm saying, don't give up. Leaders out there, don't let them give up. We can't give up. I know we all have concerns, and we're concerned about our own families and our own safety. But once we have our families safe, once we have done everything we know to do for ourselves, then it's time to reach out to others. No ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Yeah. I'm talking to several school administrators and teachers, even in the last 24 hours, sharing the same thing with me, Miranda. They have kids in their districts whose parents are in very difficult situations and crisis, and the kids are feeling no hope. They're feeling very depressed, very frustrated, and many kids are really struggling in the deepest emotional places. And so when I was talking to the superintendent yesterday, I said, when kids are in that level of crisis, sometimes we have to break the day down into smaller increments. It's like a person who's running a marathon. Sometimes they have to just make it to that next block, and then they make it to the next block and to the next block, when they're running this marathon, because just emotionally they're completely overwhelmed. And so I kind of put down 6 strategies I shared with the superintendent. I want to throw
Great.
these out,
Share those.
discuss these 6 things real quick, and kind of go from there. But it's kind of 6 ways I kind of like to break up the day for a child that's feeling that, why try? Why should I put effort into life? A child that feels like giving up. And I know for me, I'm in my 50th year, and it's interesting. My almost my entire day today is planned out, and when my day was planned out, my anxiety went way, way down. When my day wasn't planned out, my anxiety is way, way higher. And when I have a game plan, it calms my soul a little bit, calms me down. But the one of the first things that, again, I know I've already mentioned this, but it's so important, is if I was talking to those 2 girls that you just mentioned, those 2 sisters, I would let them know it's okay to feel that anxiety, that tremendous fear. That's normal right now, and that there's nothing wrong with them feeling those emotions, that fear. And if it's younger kids, I want them to express those emotions, whether it's through artwork, drawing, creating collage. I want them to express it. I'm an art therapist, so I like to express emotions through the arts. It is really important. But so just getting feelings out, whether they're positive or negative, is so important. Now, these are kind of the 6 things. If I was kind of planning out a day, for a child. Now, again, I want to throw this out to an adult. The first thing we need is that, is connection. So the first thing during the day, so these are my goals, to do these 6 things sometime throughout the day. If you can hit these 6 things, you're probably going to be able to keep pushing through. You're going to keep being able to hang in there. And the first thing, again, is that connection. We're social creatures, whether we're Zooming someone, if we're talking to a neighbor, even across a fence, or from, they're 30 feet apart from the deck in the back or the backyard or whatever, there's got to be, I don't care if you have to yell to communicate to each other. I love those visuals out of Italy where they're singing out of the windows. And people are just talking about what that meant to them emotionally, just to be singing out of the window. Or even people are, taking their, on their back porches, they're turning off and on their light switch, and they're learning, Morse code by the flipping the switch to communicate with each other. That it goes back, reminds me of a person in prison, where they'll tap X number of times on a wall so they can hear the other person tap back.
Right.
If they're in isolation, it's just that the slightest bit of communication is everything. And so sometime during the day that we're communicating, and I know I've had several school administrators say to me, Christian, I know kids that are, so what I was talking about. Sorry.
I know we're both emotional, and I'm trying to maintain myself as well. So,
I was talking to an administrator who's talking about a kid that is just staying in his room. Yeah. Sorry, I'm completely shut down.
Well, let me pick up on something.
Yeah.
As you pick back up on this, Christian.
Yeah.
I know parents and guardians of children want to stay informed, but sometimes we've got to get away from all the news that are surrounding this coronavirus, the deaths and all of that. And when children see fear in their parents, that fear will trickle down to them, because this is an image of fear. Fear has gripped the world.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we got to get away from it for a minute to be creative and coming up with other ways to get away from all of this just for a minute. Even if it's just walking together outside with your kids,
that's step number 2, by the way.
go ahead and step in and use it then.
Yeah. So step number 2 is that exercise that you just mentioned is so important, Miranda, is, getting out, getting that sunlight, and it's kind of a combination of exercise and a meal, and food. And I know right now, that's another hard thing to talk about. When some people have access to basic food and nutrition, and that's something that, again, I'm really proud of what educators and teachers are doing.
They're stepping up, I tell you, all across this country.
Step up with that food. Yeah, it's amazing to see that. But again, going back, those most basic things are everything. And so that
You know,
exercise in combination with nutrition is so important. And I say, walk with your family. It's funny, when I was out walk with my family yesterday, you would see people X number, they staying far apart from each other as they're out there moving around, which is a great thing to see. But I saw fathers riding bikes with their kids, or a dad with their daughter, and it's giving those kids in those moments, going back to the first thing about that connection, but getting those feelings out. When you're driving in a car, on a walk, that's a time when those kids can really express their feelings. Sometimes I know, as a therapist, the greatest time I can get children to open up is when they're in a car driving around. They'll open up and talk about things more. Or when they're out on a walk, on a bike ride. So use that as a kind of a double thing, kind of combines 1 and 2. So during that exercise, we can deal with their emotional states during that exercise. And then a great time for families to connect is around mealtime. I grew up in a home where we never sat down and had, man, I came up so emotional today, but I grew up, it was really not common to sit down and have a meal. And so these kids that can, sit down and have a meal together is so important. One thing I'm trying to do with my family now, we're still dysfunctional, but we'll sit down, but we have our headphones on and just saying, hey, we got to take these headphones off and connect with each other and stuff. So that's really important. And then number 3 here, actually, before I go past 1 and 2, did you want to add anything else to 1 and 2 there, Miranda?
Well, this is an opportunity for people to actually communicate, families to sit down and actually talk about their feelings right now, because children are very expressive. If they have the opportunity and they feel comfortable sharing, they will tell you how they feel about things. And we shouldn't just assume they're okay. Ask them how they feel about these particular issues going forward. They will let you know. They will let you know. They're just brutally honest. Most children are brutally honest
I was just
about things.
Yeah, and I was just reading an article too, and this is kind of making me think a lot as a parent. I was just reading an article on mental health thing, saying that a lot of times they're going to reflect the emotions of their parents, and so I'm trying to make sure that how I treat my wife, I should always treat her with dignity and tremendous respect. But I'm even watching it closer. What's my tone when I'm talking to my wife, because that tone's going to be reflected, throughout the whole family and stuff. And can we speak to each other in more patient, kinder ways? And then the third, what's that?
Civility.
Civility is huge right now, especially when we're spending this much time together. We got to lead out with civility and forgiveness. We got to give each other grace. We're all going to feel agitated at times. And, if I'm agitated at 70%, then, it helps if my wife is at 20% or vice versa. You know what I mean? We have to kind of be constantly given that balance in our family, because different family members are going to be much higher and lower at different times throughout the day. Number 3 is learn something in an area that interests you. And this is really just tapping into a passion, purpose, or interest. Human beings, one of the biggest things that makes us feel happy, that brings us fulfillment, is to feel productive. We're born with a desire to be productive. In my book, we call it production therapy. And but do something that literally interests you. Whether that's building something, it could be anything from a puzzle to creating art to anything working with your hands or physical, or it could be work. I mean, it's really broad. I don't want to narrow it down in any way, because what's productive for one person, is so massively broad. But what are your feelings about, you have any hobbies going on right now? What are you doing to stay productive?
Well, I've been working on a children's book, reading, working on some presentations, and just helping wherever I can, reaching out to other people in the community, making sure they're okay, not just thinking about my own personal needs, but thinking about the needs of other people, whether it's picking up the phone and calling a neighbor, because I am my neighbor's keeper. We've heard that saying before. We are our brother's keeper. And so I'm trying to reach out more and more to other people, making sure children are okay, giving advice wherever I can, and support whenever I can, although I may have to do it at a distance. But if I can drop something off and not, make contact, but, I'm doing whatever I can do to help in my community and outside the community, making sure people are okay. that their
No, that's
needs are
awesome. So,
being met.
yeah, and the minute we do that service, we turn outward. That's very healing. Inside, and so, find something that really interests you. It could even be something like learning how to play the guitar online. I want to do that. I always wanted to play the electric guitar, so I should have been a rock star instead of a social worker. It would have been I don't know. It would have been a better life, but
No, your passion is driving you, just like my passion for children and education and school board members and school leaders and superintendents and all the people that deal with children. That's a passion for me, because you know what, Christian, just like you, I know what it's like to grow up in poverty. I know what it's like to have working parents, but guess what? They work just to keep a roof over my head, and they could not give me some of the additional things that I needed. I almost fell through the cracks because of those needs, and I felt less valuable. I felt like I had no self-esteem and no self-motivation. And when children feel that way, they feel like they have no self-worth. At times I felt suicidal, that I wanted to give up on life because I felt like I had no value in life. What am I here for? Children are asking those kinds of questions. Why was I born? Why am I here? Every child has something significant that they're supposed to do in life, but they need us to pull that significance or potential out of them so that they can fulfill what they are really born and destined to do. They're like a mustard seed. On the inside, there's a potential in the mustard seed to grow a tree 20 feet tall. In children, there's potential there to do something significant. Somebody has a cure for cancer. Somebody's supposed to be a great principal, administrator, lawyer, doctor, but
it's in there. It's in there.
It's in them. But sometimes they're not getting everything they need equitably to pull what's in them out. So we've got to be creative in finding those things, using the resources that we have, and finding out how we can reach children that otherwise would fall through the cracks.
Yeah, the amazing thing about just having this technology we're using right now is you can go online and look up any subject matter that you have an interest in. I know the last couple of days I've been looking at, I've been studying things around post-traumatic growth or different emotional things. I'm studying, and I can read studies from Harvard, Yale. It's just amazing. I love the stories where children who are just even in isolated areas, like in small little communities in Africa and tribes and different things, will get access to technology, and they'll figure out how to do something like heal it, pull out a tooth that's rotting, or to do something to give back. But they learn the technology through just media, where they're able to almost learn how to become a dentist online. It's just unbelievable how the world is changing through this huge information opportunity we have right now. We have unlimited access to information, and going back to what you're talking about, as we learn those skills, as we learn what our talents are and our abilities are, we're able to see our potential as we do that. I almost wish I wish we had more time. Maybe I'm having to tell the story now, because one of my favorite stories is, you're one of the greatest spokesmen I know now. You speak out, you articulately impact so many things through your voice. But there was a time when you were a child, I don't want to tell your story, where you're going through so much pain you didn't even want to talk. And
didn't want to at all.
Yeah, maybe share a little bit about that. That's an amazing story.
A voice that you were born with that you didn't like, because people would bully you, make fun of it. They would laugh at my voice. They would tease me about it. And so I would just turn in hurting, feeling darkness so dark that I felt like at times I could take a knife and cut through it. That's the darkness that I felt, because I felt like I had no worth or value, not knowing that the voice that I was born with would one day be known even on a national level. I had no clue about that, and I almost gave up and quit. But there were educators, leaders, those counselors, all those individuals that exist right now that are helping children right now. They were the ones to help pull that potential out of me and say, Miranda, you have worth, you have value, you are here to do something important and significant. That's why during this crisis situation that we're in right now, It will bring out the worst in some people, and it will bring out the best in others.
Amen.
And I just want to believe that the best will come out of most people to collaborate, to do what is needed. You know, when leaders come back together, collaborate with Head Start programs to reach out to children. As part of your equity solutions and equity plans. Because I have traveled to cities and states where early childhood education is a must if you're going to reach children in poverty, children that are at risk of failing, reaching them earlier on so that they can be better prepared before they enter your school districts, the school system.
Absolutely.
If you, the earlier you reach them, the earlier the better they will perform in your district. Because for some children, they may be in poverty, but they have the ability to learn. It's just that they lack exposure to certain things that a more affluent family may be able to give their children, tutoring and taking them to different places. We can tell them about places that are free that they can take their children to expose them to different things. And some people want to say some children are lazy, but you don't know what those children are going through. You don't know what they're dealing with that caused them not to be able to sleep at night, so that when they come to school, they're sleeping in the classroom and they're being accused of being lazy. But nobody—
I was told that my whole life. I was lazy and had an attitude problem.
That's right. But nobody bothered to try to find out, Christian, why you were doing and behaving the way you were behaving.
Yeah, I was very blessed to have Mama Jackson show up. Doesn't know my story of Mama Jackson. It's interesting. I was thinking earlier, we started this out talking about the impact that education has on children outside of academics, and maybe the more important thing, how it connects us. And it's interesting. I met Mama Jackson. I realized, I was thinking this morning through the schools. I met her son Sean, who became my best friend at school. And then from that school, she connected with me under the umbrella of helping me with my academics, helping me in school. That was her way of reaching out to me in the beginning, was, hey, Christian, I'm going to help you with school. But now I look back, it wasn't really school she was helping me with. She was helping me with life. That just became the vehicle. She knew there was something way more important than academics that was going to help me make it in this world. And, but it was triggered through school. And thanks for sharing that personal story, being vulnerable and sharing that. That means a lot. And
that was the short. That was the
version
short
of it. I
version
know.
of it.
I wish we had more time. We need to get you. And I'm hoping as people learn more about you, and the people who I work with learn about you, Miranda, they'll see you as a tremendous resource. Because when I met you, a couple of years ago, it had a huge impact on my life. And I know your voice needs to get out to way more people. You are someone that can really help this country heal. And understand multiple worlds. You understand the world, the haves and the have-nots, and you get.
I lived it.
Yeah, you're the real deal. You're the real deal. The fourth thing, and by the way, these 6 things I'm going through, my goal is you may spend 5 minutes on these, but just throughout the day, if you can hit at least 3 of these 6, I think when your head hits the pillow at night, you're going to be a lot happier. You're still going to have a little bit more motivation. If you can hit all 6 during the day, and my goal, and again, as a 50-year-old therapist, is to hit all of these. My goal is that my children can do these things during the day. And I just think everybody should have access to these 6 things. I think it's really important if we're going to get through here the next time period. I think another thing, why I'm remembering this, I think it's really important, is we got to let kids know that this is temporary. This is not something that's likely to go on forever. We don't know the time frame of it. I understand that. But this is temporary. When you understand something's temporary, you can hang in there. You can push through. And so keep that in mind when you're talking to kids. I was talking to one of my sons this morning about that. I just said, hey, I know it might seem like, hey, the world did just change. But one thing we can count on is change. But it's temporary. Things are going to evolve. Is there anything you want to say about that?
It is temporary, and while we're in this temporary situation that we're in, we still have to be looking forward, pressing forward, strategically planning forward, creating our own teacher pipeline. That's one of the things that I know some districts are doing, because we're dealing with teacher shortages. I believe we're going to need more teachers going forward as we come out of this crisis situation. We're going to need more counselors. We're going to need more healthcare providers. So what are we doing going forward to address those concerns? I've met with some districts that are hiring teachers out of the country, from outside the country.
Yeah,
They're hiring great teachers. They're good teachers. They're great teachers. They're recruiting them to come to their school districts and coming to the United States to help them deal with the teacher shortages across America.
I'm hoping one thing that comes out of this crisis is that people across this country understand that one of the most noble professions to create change in this world, to impact people from multiple ways, not just academics, is being a teacher, a counselor, a social worker, a school psychologist, a school administrator. That these are heroes. These are incredible human beings, heroes. And I always tell people, it's funny, as I travel a lot, I get to sit next to these business leaders, and they'll say, what's the best thing about your job? And the greatest rush I have is to tell them, look, I get to work with the people with the biggest hearts on this planet, the kindest, most, and only us who work in education, mental health, know who these people are. And I'm going to spend 20 years around people. There's like 90% of the people I interact with for 20 years would give me the shirt off their back. I mean, I've experienced it when I've been on the road, when there's been storms and challenges and different things in travel, and I can't travel for a couple of days. They'll invite me to their houses. They'll feed you. They will do anything for you. They prioritize human beings. Humans are first when it comes to this. And I hope that's a part of waking more people up, that just working, and it's important. I respect all jobs, all careers, but sometimes I'm gonna be frank right now, our world is so focused on how much money do I have in my bank account, and can I make a lot of money, that we live in a world that prioritizes status over human beings. People will do anything to keep their status and power at the cost of human beings being left behind. And if nothing else comes out of this, I hope that wakes this world up, that there are more important things than status. And we're a society that's so status focused. And sorry, I don't mean to go off on a little soapbox here, but people's desire for status, is putting many children in a really, really bad situation. Might not be politically correct what I'm saying, but is that too controversial?
Well, it's the truth. At this time,
save me here, save me.
I know. I'm trying to bail you out, Christian. We have to put our political affiliations and our political views aside for a minute to just do what is right and what is best for other people, particularly children. And, one of the things I wanted to say, and I'm hoping people are sharing some of their best practices in the chat room so that we could post those things online. And I appreciate it so very much. Cultural proficiency training. We put a lot of pressure on our teachers and administrators across this country. But sometimes we're trying to help children. We don't even understand their culture. So why not, as part of your equity piece and strategic planning for equity, have cultural proficiency training? I love what Y-Tri does as an organization in terms of you not only address the needs of the children, but you address the needs of the people who touch the lives of children every single day to help them deal with the at-risk, emotionally challenged children every single day. And so when you don't know what to do, but you want to do something, there are great teachers all across this country, but sometimes they just don't know what to do and how to handle some of the situations that they're in, dealing with emotionally challenged, at-risk, and wounded children. See, some children are at risk, but some children come to us wounded. They're abused. They've been molested, mentally abused. Carrying all kinds of burdens. And when they come into the classroom, what's left for them, Christian, except to act out? They act out because of something emotionally they don't know how to deal with. And so you're asking teachers, some teachers are trying to teach to the test because they know they've got to, make a certain grade for the district. And, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge for them. So when we do staff development, staff training, I hope leaders across the country will look at adding cultural proficiency training
Wow,
adding what
that's awesome.
Why Try does to help those individuals that are face to face with children, help them deal with them better.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I wish we had another hour for this
I know we
conversation.
only have 6 minutes
All
left.
right,
Oh my goodness.
let me do this real. School administrators are gonna be mad at me if I don't share these 6 things real quick.
Okay,
So
please.
let me get through. So the fourth one is sometime during the day we want to do something that's fun. I mean, right now I'm applying this principle. Me talking to you right now is extremely fun. It's fulfilling. This is going to be the highlight of my day. No doubt about it. And so, but having that built in, looking for things to do that are fun, and maybe learning how to cook, or again, Zooming with friends, watching, binge watching something on TV. I think there's some crazy show out there about a lion. I don't recommend it, but follow a comedian, ride a bike, watch all the Rocky movies. Just something that's fun during the day. And if that's, and I feel like a hypocrite. I know my family, when they listen to this, they'll be laughing a little bit, because the last 2 or 3 weeks, I really haven't done much fun. I've been just grinding, just dealing a little bit with this crisis and working on a bunch of stuff. And one thing I'm really trying to tell myself this weekend, for me, was fun, was just cleaning my garage was fun. And
Really?
that's how boring I am. My life is. But I'm trying. I realize sometimes I get too serious. I spend too much time in this advocacy world. And I realize, man, I have to have some fun during the day. And especially for children, we know those outlets where they can put a smile on their face, they can laugh, they can goof off, they can just let loose. We got to find those times during the day. Do you have anything there you want to add?
Well, I hope that going forward as we come out of this, because Christian, I want to say we will come out of it.
Yeah,
I don't want to see leaders across this country that deal with children and deal with the emotional needs across this country, that we don't grow weary in well-doing. We have to continue on with what we're doing. I just want to pray and believe that people will use data to review the performance of children in the past, to know where to go in terms of the future. Some children will never go back to school for the rest of this year, possibly. I'm hearing talk about that. So how are we going to equitably deal with all of this going forward into the future? So we've got to look at it through the equity lens. We've got to address the resources, looking at the resources that we have. How do we deal with our staff, the curriculum, quality leaders, and leadership? That's what it's going to take. And the main thing is being able to communicate and collaborate. I say communicate, collaborate, collaborate.
Amen.
That is so important. Form
That's awesome.
equity teams and committees. We can do that online. Those people that are not,
great opportunity.
That have digital means to be able to do that. Create a webinar where you're getting together with all these individuals that touch the lives of children and begin to communicate and collaborate.
Absolutely. What has blown me out of the water the last 2 weeks is, I've been communicating with people for years, running around this crazy country. I've gone 7 million miles around this planet, and it has been absolutely amazing how many new people I've met and have connected with through this new, channel. Just doing more of me. Not that I didn't do it before. We did a little bit of this before, but I think you're going to see, Why Try in the future do more and more of this. And I was just telling my wife that this past week, we figured out we had reached like over 18,000 people in the last 2 weeks. I got to do a lot of traveling to reach 18,000 people. And this has been very inspiring to me, which ties into the fifth step here is, and by the way, all of these 6 steps help increase our resilience. I've been talking about so many things, about these are kind of specific skills. Resilience is the ability to bounce back, is to have suffering and use that suffering as a reason to put one foot in front of another. And each one of these steps can help us do that. So the fifth one here is to expose yourself to something inspiring for your heart and soul. Something inspiring for your heart and soul. And, that could be something you watch on YouTube, Instagram, a book, a movie, a podcast. Almost every day I'll spend some time putting on an inspirational podcast and walking around, because I spend my life dealing with crises. I have to spend time renewing myself by listening to some motivational stuff. A friend of mine was telling me, there's a story of Bethany Hamilton, who her arm got bit off by the shark. And, you know, there's a show on Netflix called Unstoppable. And that's a really inspiring show, Unstoppable. I haven't had a chance to watch. I'm hoping to watch it tonight, but everybody's telling me it's tremendous inspiration. And there's so many things out there, you know, but we got to get tapped into the things that really help our heart and help our soul. And that, you know, things like, you know, meditation, prayer, mindfulness, all those type of things, that something that inspires us. You know, me talking to you right now is inspirational. Tonight I plan on talking to Mama Jackson. She's called me the last 2 days. It's been so crazy. I haven't had a chance to call her back yet. And I know people are like, Christian, you got to call her back. But I'm aware, I'm feeling guilty. I feel it, but I know when I talk to her, I'll have that inspiration for my heart. And that is an important thing, to take time out to be inspired. If your feelings on that?
I wish all, you know, almost 700 people registered for this webinar, but could not get on. Yeah. So I'm glad we're recording it to put it out there, to give people an opportunity to be able to do that, because we're actually out of time. And I hope before we disconnect that people will share best practices that we can put online at YTry, the website that they can go to. And hear this on Facebook, hear it on YTry, and, you know, continue to have those uncomfortable conversations around equity, not being afraid to do what is right, putting aside our own personal views about things, but looking at equity through the lens of those people that are impacted by so many different things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with equity, I think I talk about this a lot. I usually end most of my speeches by saying that, you know, one of the greatest social justice issues of our time is some children are going to get access to evidence-based resilience, the skills that help create equity, the doors that open up for equity. And one of the greatest justice issues is some kids get that information and some children don't get that information. And that's, you know I'm going to go another 7 million miles around this planet, making sure every kid gets access to the information. It's only through education, you know, education is the way to get access to this information and to do this, and to be able to put kids in a position to thrive. The sixth, I'm going to just add one last step, and then
that's what I was going to say. A lot of people are
asking me to summarize it.
Perfect.
All right. I'll hit that sixth step, then we'll summarize them, and then we'll bring it all together here.
Perfect.
And then, so number 6 is acknowledge that change is a part of life. It's so important. I think did I lose Miranda there?
No, I'm still here. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, just your picture went off for a second. All right. Acknowledge that change is a part of life is number 6. Is, you know, the only one thing we can count on in this world is change. And the ability to see change is an opportunity to change myself. You know, when one door closes, another door opens, that type of mentality. And the reality is, you know, I've been on this earth for 50 years. I've never been in the future. The past has already happened.
It has.
The future, I've never been between now and whenever my life ends, I'm going to spend 100% of my life in the present. And in the present, change happens. And we have to look for opportunities to tap into something where I love people who work work a lot with soldiers and people coming back from war with PTSD and stuff are realizing they've kind of, some psychologists at the University of North Carolina a few years ago came up with something called post-traumatic growth. The ability to, out of a very difficult adversity, to use that adversity to create growth in our lives. And this isn't something that happens in the moment. To create growth out of adversity sometimes takes months, years. We have to be patient with ourselves. Resilience takes place in the striving. It's not a destination. I wrote a book on resilience. I haven't woke up and mastered resilience. Resilience is just putting one foot in front of another when you have every reason to give up. And these psychologists at the University of North Carolina found that 89% of survivors report at least one aspect of post-traumatic growth, such as a new appreciation for life. And I'll tell you what, you know, I traveled 7 million miles. You know, I got to a point where I could not stand getting on an airplane. I got burnt out, you know, flying, hotels. But I can tell you this, the next airplane I walk on, when I get to the door, I'm going to kiss the plane. Because I have a whole new perspective of the blessing to be able to move around this planet And again, they're gonna be looking at me like I'm crazy. Why is this guy kissing an airplane? But I will be kissing that airplane. But I just want to end with, and I'll summarize these. I got 2 or 3 messages saying, can you just say all 6 really quick, which I'll do for sure. But but people always ask me, where is resilience born? How do you get resilience out of people, that motivation to be resilient? And it really starts with action. Action has to show up before motivation and resilience shows up. So those 6 things I just highlighted, you might not feel like leaving your bedroom or getting out of bed, but as you tap into today, I'm going to try to get connection. That's number 1. Number 2, I'm going to move my body. I'm going to try to eat the best I can. I'm going to exercise. Number 2. Number 3 is I'm going to learn something in an area that interests me. Number 4, I'm going to do something fun today, something lighthearted. I'm going to do something that just puts a smile on my face and others. Number 5, expose yourself to something inspiring for your soul and heart. And then number 6, acknowledge that change is a part of life. And I'm going to look back and look at the things that I have already overcome in the past. And I'm going to have hope that I can overcome these things in the future, and that I'm going to embrace change and not fight change. And by the way, when you go through change, you are going to experience some grief when you go through change. When life isn't the same, you're going to experience grief. And going back to the story I told earlier, my friend who was in tears this morning, this grown man who was crying, he's experiencing grief because what he was going to do over the next few weeks, months of his life, or year of his life was laid out. That just changed. All of us are going to have to shed a few tears for that. We're going to have to experience the stages of grief. We're going to experience denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. We're going to all go through these stages of grief because our world just really did change. And so we have to go through those stages of grief. We're going through kind of a group grief, I guess, kind of a community grief. And it's okay to feel those things. But action is where the motivation, like my motivation right now, spend the last hour talking to you. My motivation, if you could hook me up to a monitor that could measure my motivation before this presentation and after, it's because I took action. We're taking action. To do something, to take action creates motivation. The action has to come. You'll lay in bed all day thinking, well, I'll get out of bed when I'm motivated. I'll put one foot in front of another when I'm motivated. That's a long wait. You have to move, and then the motivation shows up. So keep in mind that motivation shows up on the back end. So I think that's really important for people to think about right now. So anyways, those are the 6 things. I have about 10 other things I'd love to share, but we're out of time. And
me too.
And the honor to talk to you is amazing. You're one of my heroes. I consider you a mentor for me. And I'm blessed to have you in my life, and your kindness and unconditional loving. First time I spoke, you pulled me aside and said, Christian, I understand your message. What you're doing is much more important than you. And I'll never forget that. And I'm blessed to have people like you show up in my life. Thank you so much.
Well,
Miranda.
I could say the same thing about you, Christian, and your story. It just moves me to tears because I know so many children have found themselves in similar situations. And your story is one that the nation needs to hear. And that's why people are calling on you from all over the country to share your story and how you were able to build an organization, Why Try, to help assist families and teachers and administrators all across the country. So I hope people will go to the website, get the best practices, share some of their best practices right now, go to the website and see what Why Try is all about and how they can use it as an equity piece as far as their strategic planning process. And I want them to continue to plan, even though they're sitting at home right now. Consider sitting down, continuing to collaborate with one another digitally, writing down ideas, and when they come back together to face some of these issues that will come out of this crisis as we try to deal with educating children futuristically, they will have some things to bring to the table and be able to share and do that. This crisis will pass. It will pass. But what are we going to do now to get ready for the future? Because some things, if we don't deal with them now, we're going to deal with them on the back end for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And please check out our resilience guide. That's at resilienceguide.org, right? Yep, resilienceguide.org. Do not miss that. It's something that can really bring families together. I just got a whole bunch of feedback yesterday from parents that are doing these activities with their families to build resilience. This helps build resilience for the parents and for the kids. So it's something we're giving away free for the next couple months for a little while here while all this is going on. It took over almost 4 years to develop, and I can promise to be a tremendous resource for you. Our website is whytry.org, WHYTRY, whytry.org, and we're here to help you guys any way we can. We definitely have time right now to help, so we will, no shortage of time. We'll
have to do this again.
Yeah, and we would love to do this again, and any way that, online, if you want me and Miranda to come on together online, we'd be willing to do that for your school district, to talk to your staff or your community, whatever you guys need. I'm
going to share a slide right now with both your email addresses.
You got that, Jason?
Yep. I'll put that up right now.
Great. I look forward to hearing. I look forward to hearing from people out there, school board leaders, administrators, social workers, healthcare providers, parents. We had a variety of people on with us, and I just wish the other 700 or 600 individuals could have gotten on, but there was
So just a quick note on that. If you can pass on to our apologies, Zoom apparently limited the amount of people that could get on for us, which they weren't supposed to do. We have this recorded. We're going to upload it to YouTube, and we're going to send a link out to everybody that registered. So we're going to reach out, and then we're going to get it posted on our Facebook page, probably on our website as well. So we're going to have it in a very shareable format, but please keep this discussion going. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you helping to moderate all of this.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody out there who's fighting on the front lines, and the biggest fight that we have to do is inside our own houses, is keeping the people in our houses safe. There's no work to do more important than what you're doing inside your own home. So keep that going, and keep plugging away. You guys are all my heroes. Thank you.
And hang in there, everybody, and don't give up. Fear can paralyze us sometimes, but we can't give in to the spirit of fear permanently. Just know this will pass. We will not stay in crisis mode forever. It's just that we don't know when. But while we're using technology and other things to stay together, let's use it to strategically begin planning for our future. The future of our families, the future of children around us, our neighbors, the future for everybody. And we're going to get through this, but we're going to do it together. And that's what it's all about, working together to get past crisis situations. I've done it before, and we will do it again as a country and as a nation to be able to help others get through this process as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both so much. This was awesome. I think everybody's giving you a virtual round of applause. So this has been fantastic.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll get this link out. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it so very much.